Hello, everybody, and welcome to another jam-packed episode of the Michael and Patty Show, covering everything Prince Edward Island and, of course, our main topic, PEI real estate. Good morning, Patty. You're looking wonderful on this nice, bright, waterfront Charlottetown day.
Yes, it is actually a really beautiful day today. A little on the chilly side, but thank you. And how are you today?
I'm 10 times better than you.
Okay. Yes, the podcast MAPS, the Michael and Patty Show, does bring you everything PEI, real estate, and everything Prince Edward Island that you would need to know to help navigate yourself through the process if you're owning a property already on PEI, looking to buy or sell, or if you're from away, as we refer to them here on the island, and you want to move or relocate to Prince Edward Island. This podcast is a must for you to listen to because it is so filled with information and will hopefully help make the process a lot easier for you.
Well, let's get on with it. We got a bunch of stuff to cover. These topics are typically things that we've ran across in the last week, or just a small peppering or selection of them. So topic number one, I go to visit a house. I'm doing an in-person video. Been doing a lot more of those. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, I know you're starting to think about possibly considering starting again and blowing the cobwebs off the YouTube site.
Our company's YouTube channel is going
I'm talking
quite
about
well.
yours.
Oh, for me to
How'd
get
you
out there,
find it?
yes, to do videos where I'm in them. I've had many clients over the years, and I'm sure you have too, Michael, that they don't want the elevator music video experience. They want a little more candid. They want to see the realtor in. Now, not the realtor blocking the entire screen.
Well, we've already covered keep your big fat head out of the frame.
But they want to hear a more realistic experience of the property, explaining the highlights. They don't need to have the obvious things pointed out, of course. But yes, I do feel I need to do more YouTube videos like I used to do many years ago.
And I'm sure you'll do fabulous, and I know I'll be watching at least one of them. So I go up to this house yesterday to do a video. Obviously, I had all my equipment with me. I looked at the driveway, and this is a new listing, and there's a 3-foot snowbank in the driveway. And I'm thinking, well, this isn't great. I can get in there, but I'm thinking for potential showings, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for people driving by that might see the property in MLS, that there's a giant snowbank and it looks like the house has been abandoned. But more importantly, what I texted the vendors about, the owners of the house, is there are insurance clauses that require accessibility to your property. Otherwise, you're not going to get covered. This is really important to know because, as we know, insurance companies, when they get a claim, the first thing they're going to look at is whether or not that policy applies to that particular property. And if the fire trucks can't get to it to put out the fire, you may not have coverage.
And that's a really good point. It has to be available or accessible by the fire trucks for fire and safety. And it does make it look abandoned as well, which then makes your property a target for loiters and
Lowball offers would be my main concern. We haven't had a lot of squatters or loiterers out in the country, but we definitely would have lowball offers coming in because the presentation of the property is as such that it looks like they've just walked away from it.
No, I agree.
Water tests is another thing I really want to have done preemptively when I list a property, because if there's any problems, I want to know about it. I want to solve those problems, whether it's putting in a UV filter or filtration system or whatever, before we get into a purchase and sale agreement. Now, I know some owners don't want to spend the money, even though it's probably just a couple $100 now, because I believe the tests are free. It's just the manpower, the transportation you're paying for to get the test done. But if you do get a bad test, because we're looking for 2 tests, chemical and bacteria, for tourism operations, they only require 1 test. I think it's the biological, isn't it?
Yes, the biological you need.
So they don't do the chemical. We need both. This is done for a mortgage holder. Most people are going to have a mortgage, even if they have the cash. But if you get the water test done and someone comes along, for instance, with this particular new listing, which is a beautiful, meticulously clean country home with exceptional water views, and out of the back of the house, you can see beautiful country views. 7,000 Route 19 in Canoe Cove. You might
I
wanna
like
check
the
it out.
little plug, Michael.
This house, we're going to get the water test done. That way we have it on file. It's vacant, so it can close in a matter of days or quickly as the paperwork can be done. The other thing I asked them for is any receipts for septic pumping. Usually I would want the tank pumped and get a receipt, but in the winter you don't want to leave your tank empty because it might crack. Any thoughts?
No, the frost would get into the ground and yes, definitely crack the septic. So you want to leave at least it half filled with refuse. And with regards to water testing, it makes sense, especially if you have a vacant property or cottage. If you would like to sell it over the winter months, it is completely possible to do so. Just we strongly recommend you get your water test done prior to winterizing it and shutting it down for the season, because you can then generate a sale and we can facilitate to try to get that closed for you by the end of the winter.
Yeah, what Patty's saying is a lot of times people will close their cottages or their houses up in the winter, and then we can't get a water test easily done or do not want to do one because we'd have to delinterize the house, do the water test, heat the house, wait for the results to come back, winterize the house again. It turns into a bit of fiasco. What's the other things that seem to be attracted to vacant houses? And I have no idea why, and I don't think anybody else does.
Yeah, it is interesting. There is a lot of flies, the barn flies that you'll end up finding on windowsills and on the floors around. There's been many homes, and I actually just sold a property about a month or so ago that is vacant, an older home, and the little critters just seem to get in, all these little flies, and just fill the house. So we just recommend that you, especially if you're a seller, but if you're not on island, just ask your listing agent, or if you're the listing agent, just hopefully there's a broom and a dustpan, just sweep them up.
I use a cordless vacuum.
Oh, do you? Okay.
I did one yesterday. Because again, you have a house you're showing. You don't want them going in there. The driveway's not plowed and there's a million flies inside. It just gives the idea that these people have abandoned the property. And again, you're going to get the lowball offers.
Yeah, because it doesn't feel loved. When a home is taken care of, it feels loved, and there's a sense of pride of ownership, which excites a buyer or makes a buyer feel like this home has definitely been taken care of, versus the showing that I was just at where the driveway's full, the house is full of bugs. It just gives a completely different buyer experience.
You had a situation in the last week where somebody had a house they sold and they were buying a house, and that person was buying another house, and that person was buying another house in PEI. Well, that sounds like a recipe for success there to close on time. Didn't that sale get delayed by a few weeks while these people were living in a hotel?
Yeah, the way that sale all ended up happening was there were two properties that had to close in Ontario, and our Prince Edward Island property was the third one in line. Now, the buyers of the property on PEI did give themselves a week. So if you're questioning how much time between closings, if it's a one house, you're just selling yours and you've got a clean buyer, just meaning they don't have something that needs to close. They've come from a rental or a first-time home buyer, and they're purchasing your property. And once that closes, your purchase going forward, that typically can happen in the same day or even give yourself a day buffer in between. However, this particular one had three in line. They did give themselves a week in between property number 2 and property number 3 closing, and that still wasn't enough time. It took about 2.5 weeks just because there was a delay, something to do with the buyer number 1's financing and issues there. It just snowballs. So what I know I recommend to my clients, I usually say a week is enough time. This might have just been an anomaly in one of those situations that we may not see for 5 more years, hopefully again. But you really should give yourself about a week. If it's from one province to the next, it allows you some travel time. You time the movers, and hopefully allows for a smooth transition to the property here on the island.
What do Boy Scouts say? What's their motto? Be prepared.
Be prepared. Okay.
So have a plan B. Do not put all your stuff in a moving truck, expect to be at your lawyer's office, and expect things to close on time. Most of the time they will, but you should always have a plan B for the dog and the cat and the moving truck and the furniture and everything else if it doesn't, because on the last podcast, we talked about a delay over a postal code that went on for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and something else I was going to mention, Michael, that was on another property that was delayed in closing is if you are a buyer and you don't have the funds, the moving truck, this is how stressful and intense this day can be. The moving company, the guys are saying, we have your furniture. We're going to be arriving at the property, first thing in the morning, and assuming that's the next day. But of course, it didn't close. And now they're threatening, like, what do we do with your stuff? Now, the buyers may put on added pressure onto the sellers and ask the sellers if they can move their stuff in. I don't know what you say to your eyes. That's what I told my sellers. I said, I would strongly recommend, because I can't tell them what to do, but I strongly recommend against you allowing them to move their belongings into the home until the funds have exchanged hands. It is not because I want my sellers to be difficult, but there's so many legal implications. And again, I do defer it to the lawyers because I don't want to do the lawyer's job. But it's not the seller that's being difficult. It's just good business practice to not mess up the order in which the transaction closing needs to happen.
It exposes you to too much liability as a homeowner. Ideally, from the purchaser's standpoint, if you have the financial capability, buy the house through bridging your financing or cash so you're not stuck homeless waiting for another house to sell. Because we're just talking about the problems on the buying side in PEI. We're not talking about closing your house in Ontario or Quebec or Alberta or BC or wherever it is. Next, I'm still getting the question, what is this? Do you need authorization by the provincial government to buy over 5 acres of land? The answer would be
yes.
In order to buy over 5 acres of property or 165 feet of water frontage, you do have to go through IRAC. You can find that at IRAC, irac.pe.ca. There's a 1% fee. It's all on there, and it's on an accumulative basis. So even if you own 10 acres and then you're buying another 2, you would have to go through the application process again, correct?
Yes, there's a whole Land Protection Act that is on the IRAC site that you can completely educate yourself on. If you want to read the whole thing, fine. I usually just take a snippet of the main part on there to make sure that my clients do not miss it.
Best thing to do is hire an experienced real estate lawyer that's really good at dealing with IRAC applications, and you'll probably have 100% success. On the next note, the next question I get is, what does it mean if something's identified by IRAC? Well, what happens if you do decide to go out and buy that 200-acre dream property on the water and thinking you're going to cut it up to 50 different pieces and sell it off to all your friends? Well, that's not going to happen, at least for 10 years, because they're going to do what's called an identification for non-development. And it will be a stipulation on your IRAC approval that will say, yeah, you can buy the property, but you can only put a single-family dwelling on it.
Yeah, and to have a property that says it's not identified by IRAC just implies that this property has probably either passed the 10-year time period of that restriction or has been transferred hands with island residents, so IRAC was never involved in any of the transactions.
Moving along to showings. We try to keep our showings under 1 hour, but what's the difference between a showing that is 30 seconds long or 59 minutes long? And what does a second showing to the same party mean?
Typically, now the 30-second showing, did they even go inside the house?
They walked in, and then they wiped their feet off, and then went outside.
I see. The shorter the showing, the quicker the decision was made on the buyer's behalf that this property is not for them. That is typically, and I have had clients that have pulled up, which is why I strongly recommend do Google Street View, know what's in the area. We should not, in today's day and age, rule out a property based on what the neighboring properties are or the location when you drive to view the property. That homework should be done prior to actually viewing the property. And I don't get that too much, but I still hear that that does happen. So use Google Street View. They've just updated it October 2024 on many areas on PEI. So the data is pretty up to date. Now, if they go in the house and they're just there for a couple minutes, look around, it's because the floor plan doesn't meet their needs, or there's just sometimes a smell can cause them to go, I can't do this. If it has a smoke smell, many will not proceed.
Well, these days it'd be a weed smell.
These are things that will cause a buyer to just turn around and go back out the door. Even strong scents. More and more people are having scent allergies. So do not be burning incense or spraying a ton of air freshener around, because sometimes it could just be that, and it's not safe for the person to be in the home. So just have your house clean, have the smells very neutral. It will, it will be more conducive to a more successful showing. Now, the longer the showings, that person is moving their furniture in their head is what I've experienced. They're looking for, do you think our dining room set will fit in here? Do you think our living room set? Yeah, we could probably position it here. Where do we place the children? Where do we put mom and dad? These are the things that they will be doing. It's not that they're sitting there picking through all your closets and cabinets and all of those things. They're moving in with their eyes.
And a second showing means what?
That
And they're probably going to bring their family with them, or extended family at that point, and other people to get their opinions.
Yeah.
And they're going to bring a measuring tape.
Yes, second opinions for the second showing, as well as they want to be more detailed in the offer typically that they put forth, or it's down to 2 properties, and they just want to rule out, I didn't notice this. Because when you go through a house a first time, you're just so overwhelmed with, okay, does it have my basic wish list? And as you go through and those are checked off, it's like, yeah, you know what? I really like this place. This could be a contender. Then you go into another place and that also could be a contender. So the second viewings could be comparing the 2 of them with one another, or it could just be getting a second opinion from family or loved ones. It could be, like you said, Michael, bringing a measuring tape, making sure items fit, going a little more detailed. They're kind of doing their own kind of Mickey Mouse home inspection. Yeah, they just want and they're looking for leverage items as well, I find, to be able to come in with whatever offer they're looking at putting forth.
Leverage items, they're going to ask for stuff, including appliances, furnishings, lawnmowers, stuff.
Yeah, or deficiencies within the home.
Well, we've covered that, because if it's one of my listings, we've had it pre-inspected, so we know everything there is to know about this house. And not only that, we've priced it appropriately based on the appraisal, the CMA, and the home inspection. So there's no dilly-dallying around with our listings.
Good job, Michael.
Plus, we've got the receipts, or we've had the septic tank pump. We've got the water test done. There's nothing they need to do other than writing a check.
100%.
It's so convenient. It's
It
a
is.
one-stop purchase.
Yes.
Whereas if you don't have the water test, there could be problems. Septic tank could be problems. Home inspection is almost absolutely always going to be problems. Even on a perfect house. Once they've done their second showing, they can write a clean offer. We've already covered them trying to use those things as negotiating tools, those deficiencies, because we've already probably discovered them in the home inspection.
Yeah, so do you have a complimentary sold sign for the second viewings, Michael, waiting on the kitchen counter for them?
I usually give that to the agent showing the house, and I tell them to put the sold sign on it and retrieve the lockbox, because we'll no longer need it because it's a done deal. What else do we have on the list? We have assigning values on things like golf courses or multifamily buildings, or let's say it's a mechanic shop or a shopping mall. This is not something the average agent should be putting values on. Not only is it not, but it's also contrary to our realtor code to be voicing opinions on things you know nothing about. Plus, if I own a golf course or a big building or a shopping plaza or some commercial entity, I should probably just get an AACI appraisal done, a commercial appraisal done, so I've got someone that actually knows what they're doing, putting a value on it, rather than hiring a residential agent that might be a relation or a family member or just got their license, because you could end up losing hundreds of thousands of dollars or years in time putting something on at a a value that's not realistic. And then, of course, when they do that, they think, oh, I put it on for $4 million, I sold it for $2 million, so I lost $2 million because that's what the residential agent said. But be very cautious when pricing commercial properties. They are an expertise, and you probably want to hire an appraisal that specializes in that particular type of property, whether it's a shopping mall, apartment, or that mechanic shop, or maybe it's even a B&B, which would almost hinge on the residential aspect.
Yeah, and Michael, I know you've sold the mall, the waterfront mall in Summerside a few times. Would you still recommend, if somebody contacted you to list, say that mall again or another property, would you still be advising your seller client, we need to get a commercial appraisal? Because I know you're...
Did you ever hear the saying, penny wise and pound foolish?
Yes.
The odd thing is people will lose hundreds of thousands of dollars on a property because they're too cheap to get an appraisal done, which could cost probably anywhere between $1,000 and $5,000, depending on what it is. I always tell people, and I know this is standard in commercial real estate elsewhere, get an appraisal done. We're not playing the game that the residential sellers do, where they'll hire, they'll bring in 10 different agents and interview them, and whoever gives them the highest price, that's who they list with. This is complex real estate, and particularly in PEI, because you do not have a million comparables. The commercial market is very, very slim here in comparison to, say, Toronto, Montreal, BC, or New York or something. Get an appraisal done, always. It's better for you too, because now you're not getting in this stupid argument about, oh, I think it's worth this, and my friend Bob, well, he sold a house and he thinks the shopping mall's worth that, right?
Yeah, so it's sellers beware. You really should have a commercial appraisal done, and not... Realtors, we should stay in our lane. We're not trained. It is not part of our requirement. We do not have commercial training that is offered unless someone has the accreditation and they're a realtor on top of it. You really need to get a commercial appraisal done.
And what about residential? Wouldn't it be nice in the perfect world that all sellers got an appraisal done, or 2 or 3 of them?
Yeah, because then it's not... You're hiring your realtor now based on what they're going to do for you, and not who is going to tell you what you want to hear based on the highest dollar.
Exactly. Now, when we get a file done, another topic, or not get it done, when we get an offer on a property, do we just run out all willy-nilly and send it all over to the lawyers right away?
No, as soon as we have an accepted offer on the property, I know my business practice, there's a process that has to happen. Now, if there's a quick closing, lawyers, and we deal with many law firms, will say, send us the sale file if you're representing the buyer, because the listing brokerage is not going to do this. So if you're a buyer's agent or you're the buyer and you're listening to this, either you send your offer yourself as the buyer, or have your buyer's agent send the offer to the lawyer CCing you, so that your lawyer can schedule in the title search. If not, depending on the time of year, it can get really busy. And if you have a very tight closing, sometimes it should just assume you're going to drop it in the lawyer's lap, and they're going to have a title search done within 48 hours. They may have a list of title searches all slated already. So send it. If it's a longer closing, say 60 days.
Is this with conditions removed or without?
This is without conditions removed.
So you're only sending the file out.
If it's a tight closing, if it's, say, 4 weeks out and you got 2 weeks for conditions, 1 week for the lawyer, and it closes the following week, the lawyers will be very frustrated if you just dump this on their lap and give them a couple days to do title search. They will ask. They will not do anything to charge the buyers. They just want to be able to schedule it in for title search. Now, all conditions have been removed. At this point in time, typically the best practice on Prince Edward Island, and I think there's only 2 listing real estate brokerages that do not send off the files, but predominantly most listing real estate brokerages will send off the complete file to both lawyers, so that the lawyers will, great communication, they can refer back to one another if there's any issues on the file without having to chase down the real estate agents involved. And it creates a more seamless communication and process. But if it's a longer closing, you don't send the file until all conditions have been removed.
I don't send the file until all conditions are removed. And I find that certain law firms do not make title searches an excuse, and I find other law firms do. A title search is not a big deal. It does not take a month to do a title search. So if they have the inability to do it in a couple of weeks or so, there's something wrong in that office as far as I'm concerned. They need to hire some more title search people.
Well, you're a couple weeks, of course. If conditions were removed on Friday and title search is due the following Friday with a couple days for the seller's lawyer to...
But that usually doesn't happen.
Well, sometimes it does, but
I think you're grabbing at straws.
I don't think I am.
I think you are. What's appraiser latitude, getting back to appraisals? If I get an appraisal done on my house, does the appraiser just come up with a number, or do they base it on the number of days on market? Do I tell the appraiser what number I'm looking for based on how much time I want to be on market?
No.
Yes, you do.
I have
When a bank gets an appraisal done, they want to know what it's going to take to sell that house within 90 days. They don't want to sit on the house for 5 years trying to get the pie in the sky number. So when you're getting an appraisal done, you also need to tell the appraiser, I don't want to be sitting on this house for 3 years. I want, say, a 3-month window to get it sold, or 6 months or a year, or whatever the case may be.
I don't 100% agree with you, because if the days on market, say today they might be 60 days.
Now, what if you rephrase that?
Okay.
I want my house sold in 3 months. That's the value I want. That's the value the bank's going to want.
That's very different.
I'm not getting into your statistical mindset of, how many days on market is it this month? How many days on market is in the spring or the fall? I'm talking, I want this house sold in 3 months based on today's information.
Yeah, it's just not my experience that's how appraisers...
It says it on the first page, usually first or second page. It'll say this house has been priced to sell within 90 days based on current market conditions.
Okay. I will
do every day.
I will take a look at that. But what if average days on market are 6 months? So do they give you the 6-month mark, or do they automatically tailor it to 90 days?
You'd have to discount the price.
Okay.
You discount a price, assuming there's liquidity, because we've had times in PEI where there's no liquidity. You could take a building lot that was on for $250 and lower the price down to $10, and it won't sell because there's no buyers. And that was done. I saw building lots that were on for $249. They lowered them down to $29, and they still sat. That is a no equity situation, but that was also during the financial crisis in the States. You remember that?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that was totally confusing. On to the next.
No, I think it was a good conversation. It's something I'm gonna look back on an appraisal, and if you have an appraisal in your, whether you have a filing cabinet or in the cloud, I'd just be curious to...
I have every paper I've generated over the last 26 plus years stacked up in my office to the ceiling.
Okay, but this is what this is all about. It's all about learning and educating ourselves, and sometimes we actually learn something. So thank you.
If I'm from out of province, I'm looking for a real estate agent to sell my property, which is abandoned with a 6-foot snowbank in front and filled with flies. What's the best way for me to find an agent based on what I see on realtor.ca? Pictures, video, description?
You could do that. One of the searches that I do, if I have a seller in another province asking me, do you know anyone in my area? The first place I go to is I'll go on YouTube. I'll put in realtor and the name of the community and see if there's anyone aggressively out there creating property videos to market properties. And I've done that
with
many
themselves
times.
in it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. With themselves in it is just an added bonus. One, they're confident, they know their stuff, and, they're just a little more aggressive with their approach.
I do the same thing. I always use YouTube as the first resort, but I also look at how many videos they've done, when was their last video, how many views are they getting on their video, because someone can put a video on and 6 months later, they have 7 views, which is their family, where someone else puts one on, they have 10 or 20,000. So I look at that. Then I go to realtor.ca. I look at the quality of their pictures, the write-up, the description, and what else?
That's exactly what I do. I think we missed a point.
We missed a point? Okay.
About double-ending sales and dual representation.
I purposely skipped over that to come back to it now.
Okay.
There is a property that went on the market, and it was $1 million, because everything in PEI is $1 million, even if it's worth $250 now. And it sold in 24 hours, and the agent that listed it double-ended it. I had a potential buyer that was willing to pay more than full price, but because they accepted this offer and the agent double-ended it, I feel first of all, the purchasers shouldn't have been represented by the listing agent in most cases. And second of all, the other showing, which was booked before they accepted this offer, should have been allowed to go forward. But I feel too much of this stuff goes on, and that's why they're eliminating agents double-ending or representing purchasers and sellers, because was this house priced so the agent could double-end it for a buyer he had in his pocket? Or did this just happen out of coincidence?
And that's a really good question. So many sellers will be approached by a realtor, and they may say, I have a buyer. I mean, I know we covered this on a previous podcast in 2024, because that situation happened to one of my clients who just nicely deferred them back to me. But they knocked on the door and they said, I have a buyer, or they'll send a letter out and say, I have a buyer. So as a seller, please ask yourself, if you're going to go ahead and get into a business agreement with this particular agent, who are they pricing the property for? Their buyer that they are already working with, or for you? So I would be recommending that if they have a buyer, great, tell them to go ahead and write an offer on the property. Why do you have to list it? You can create a listing agreement for that one particular buyer, which we call a 24-hour listing. Or you can, if you already have a realtor that you've worked with in the past, call them up and say, I need you to represent me because I don't want to leave money on the table. Now, your situation, Michael, I completely agree. In my professional opinion, I feel that perhaps that listing agent, and I don't know all the details, I'm only taking in what you're telling me here, but did a disservice to that seller. Probably the buyer is happy as can be, but did a disservice to that seller by not allowing showings to happen. Now, a listing, just so that the public knows, it goes on the MLS, say on a Monday. It really takes about 3 days for that listing to fully wake up and have it sent out to third-party sites, real estate company sites, Kijiji, all these places that we market and promote the property listing to, in order for the vast number of buyers who are looking for that particular kind of property to end up realizing it's on the market. That does not happen within the first couple hours or the first 24 hours even. So you're doing a disservice as a seller, just quick and jumping into or allowing your listing agent to push you through the process and say, you better accept this. This is probably going to be your best offer. Then just leave it open for a couple of days, or allow the listing to, see how the public responds to it, especially if it's not a niche product. Sometimes if it's a niche product, that buyer, you don't want to lose them if you have two beds, one bath, or one bed, one bath type situation.
In this particular case, I feel if the listing agent was representing solely the home seller, it would have been to their advantage to, if they had that much activity and that much heat and people wanting to write offers within 12 hours of the listing going live, to get a multiple offer situation in play, leave the offers open for 3, 4, 5 days so you'd have a stack of them, and now you're getting, 10, 20, 30% more for that house.
And that's a good point. As a seller, you can say, I want offers left open, especially if it's in the first 24 hours. I want the offers left open for 48 hours or 72 hours. As a seller, it gives you an opportunity to see if anyone else presents themselves.
Now, the other thing I find that the public, for the most part, isn't very educated on is you sell this house for $1 million that you had $75,000 into it because you built this little cottage 25 years ago. Now what do you do with that money? I would be very, very careful when it comes to using a so-called financial advisor. And I would make sure that you're extremely well educated if you're going to place that money anywhere, because a lot of the financial advisors are working a lot for themselves and not particularly for the client, particularly if they're taking a monthly percentage off it, which is insane, to manage that money rather than handling it yourself or hiring someone on an hourly basis to advise you what to do with that money. And you had your daughter, Kayla, that we talked to about, investing. And of course, she ends up going to the bank. I would recommend getting some financial literacy. The books that I recommend are probably The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham, which taught Warren Buffett. And there's 2 Tony Robbins financial books that actually cover a lot of this stuff, insurance policies. They cover the RRSP equivalents. This is an American book. They're the same thing in the States. What is it, a 401k or whatever? But be careful where you're putting that $1 million in cash, because you could maximize the return with just a little bit of time invested in educating yourself if you're not already. Make sense?
Yeah, and that's what I understand. Her thought process is, this is not my strength, so perhaps she should
what she's doing is she's calling the fox that's in the hen house.
Yeah, she should. And I've been talking to her about it. Even if she visits a few different banks, not just her own, to get a little bit different information. There's so much information online that's available that she should be at least educated and informed before she goes into the meeting. I know I've had quite an extensive conversation, and I know you, Michael's actually spoken to her too with regards to this, just to try to prepare her to ask better questions, to be better informed. But yeah,
educate yourself rather than expecting somebody else to take. Don't expect somebody else to be looking after your best interest, particularly in financial services.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the banks are as wealthy as they are. Just the other day, I looked at my MasterCard bill and it said if I was to put the minimum payment on my MasterCard bill, it would take 113 years to pay off.
That's pretty scary.
I would say so, at 28% interest. Getting to a close here, building lots. Yes, you can still buy a building lot in PEI for under $25,000. Are you going to be able to build on it? Well, if you don't need a road, you don't need to get to that place year-round, you don't need water or sewage or septic, yes, you can do that in some cases. When you're seeing some of these lower-priced building lots, not all, there's still some very good value in PEI, and that's why people are buying and moving here. There's usually a reference to PERC 1, 2, and 3, percolation test 1, 2, and 3. That's for your septic. Percolation 1 is perfect. Percolation 2 is usually add some fill. Percolation 3 is an engineered system, which can actually cost more to install than the building lot is worth. So if you're buying a building lot, in this case, 25 grand, that engineered system could cost you 35 grand. So make sure when you're buying a building lot, there's road access. If you're planning on staying there in the winter, that you have the ability to plow it yourself, contract it out, or it's plowed by the government, which could be unlikely if it's a clay road that's in a seasonal cottage subdivision. And make sure you can get water or well. Otherwise, you're going to have the world's most expensive paperweight.
No, absolutely.
Anything else you want to add to that?
No, I think you covered it.
Realtor.ca. There's a box there that says, send me more information. It's a template. Is there anything the public can do to make that just a little more useful to us? Because we get about probably between 1 and 5 of these a day.
The public, if they're working with a realtor, they can have what we call a custom.
I'm not talking about that.
It's the documents.
If you email an agent, sends an email, it says, please send me more information. And that's it. End of story. So get this email. And in fact, it was this building lot. It would be very helpful if they said, what information are you looking for? Map, survey, perk test results?
Yeah, it's just a box and it's very easy. They're usually couch shoppers.
So what information would you like in an email rather than just send me information?
Well, I would like to have a little more detail and know that they're not sending that off to 10 different realtors and we're all scrambling for the next half an hour putting together an information package. However, If you're working with a realtor, back to where I was,
We don't want to go there.
and you have a custom collaboration site set up, then you would end up having access to all the additional documents, which would be the property condition disclosure statement, usually a geo-ortho map, if there's any perk tests, surveys, if there is a home environment test to, determine the efficiency of the home. There's all these...
An efficiency test.
An efficiency test. A floor plan may be available. You need to, if you're trying to do this on your own, from your home, sitting on your couch, and you click for more information, it just lets me know they may not be 100% serious, or they're just getting started and they need a little education, which is what I'm offering, is a custom collaboration site. Ask your realtor to set you up one, because all these documents will be made available to you through that platform.
Only if, when the listing was inputted, they checked the little box on the agent's or the broker's side that says shareable with public, isn't it?
Yes.
Which a lot of times they're not, so they would have to go to their agent to ask if there's any documents, because I think that's more of a newer system that we've seen.
Yes, that's something that has been implemented this past year, that we are able to, we by default check all the documents that are available, that we obviously have seller's permission to share, make them available to the public.
But they're not available on realtor.ca yet.
No, they have to have a custom collaboration site and be working with a realtor.
Cool. Wrap her up.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thanks for some of the questions and that are coming in. We love being able to share some of our knowledge and actually even educate one another from time to time on some new facts. We hope you're having a great 2025 year and you've set all your New Year's resolutions and you're keeping on track with them all. And I think that's about it.
What was Larry David's New Year resolution?
To always stop at a bathroom before he left.
Yes.
Yes.
It's always a good one to have.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to give us a star rating, feedback, and follow, subscribe, whatever you do with the podcast.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing your new in-person YouTube videos you'll be creating this week.
Oh, I didn't say I was doing them this week, but this year. We can look
That's
at
a lot of time. Can we tighten it down to maybe a month?
No, I'm not letting you put me in a box, and I will let everyone know when I've completed my property video. So keep listening to Maps so that you are one of the most well-educated and informed either buyer or seller, and make sure that you have a wonderful day.
Bye for now.
Bye for now.